time to get smarter about how we watch and how we consume Florida State's defense. And to do that, we're bringing in an expert who's learned an awful lot in his time when he was at Florida State, winning a national title and playing under so many coordinators in a brief college career. 3 defensive coordinators for Nile Lawrence-Stample, who we welcome now to Warchant TV. Again, played for FSU from 2011 to 2015. He was there when the confetti rained on the Rose Bowl field in Pasadena, and we welcome him now to Warchant TV for the first time. Nile, how's it going today, and welcome to the programs.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me, man. I'm super happy to be here. I'm excited to talk about some of the things that I've been through and some of the coaches and some of the philosophies that I've learned, as well as talk about Adam Fuller and how he's going to continue to get us to the right spot here at Florida State, man. I'm looking forward to it.
So we're going to NLS University, Nile Lawrence-Stample University here, because Nile played underneath Mark Stoops, Jeremy Pruitt, Charles Kelly in his time from 2011 to 2015, and on some of the best defenses in the last 20 years at Florida State, best defense in program history. But we want to learn a little bit more about Adam Fuller by drawing on your experience of playing for 3 guys who engineered top-tier Florida State defenses. So if you don't mind, let's get to the Nile Lawrence-Stample, who arrives in Tallahassee, 2011 season. He's working with Mark Stoops, the defensive coordinator. When you got on campus, how did Mark Stoops strike you as a coach, and what did you learn in your time when he was here as a defensive coordinator for those first 2 seasons?
So I learned a ton. Mark Stoops is a very, very serious individual. He's awesome. He'll laugh all day, but when it comes down to between those white lines, he is very fierce coach. I'm so happy to have been coached by him. I'm so happy about the career that he's had at Kentucky as well. So when it comes to his defense, he ran a very simple defense. We ran basically over special 95% of the time. He really let his guys eat. We ran a 4-2. It was just really just meat and potatoes. Let's get after it, and we're going to blitz them, right? So we blitzed a ton. And where some of our shortcomings, which every defensive scheme has its shortcomings, we were able to really make up for it because we had dogs. We had Tank Carradine, Everett Dawkins, Anthony McLeod, Bjorn Warner. We had some really dog defensive linemen. So we're able to make up for some of that, because if you can get to the quarterback, you're able to have your secondary do whatever it needs to do just to hold on tight. So that was a awesome opportunity. I think that where we get the most out of Mark Stoops and where that transition and where I feel like he helped build the foundation was he was an awesome recruiter. He was able to bring a lot of good guys in, but also he trusted his guys, and we trusted him to put us in the right positions. But he just let us go, man. He let us eat. That was really I would say that is like the number one philosophy, at least when he was at Florida State. Let the boys eat.
Well, that group did, and that's one of the best defensive lines that I can remember in terms of a 4-down lineman scheme. I mean, when you've got Tank Carradine as a backup and Dan Hicks
right?
at defensive end, I mean, that
crazy.
That group had so much skill, and you're right, they were unbelievable on the trail too. That was Jimbo 1.0. They divided James Coley Grant divided up Miami, South Florida into 2 counties, and Mark obviously had a lot of pull there too. They stocked the cupboard for the next guy, who is your defensive coordinator, who is Jeremy Pruitt. And while Mark seems very approachable, Midwestern guy, Jeremy seemed very dialed in and all about that football life. What was it like getting coached by Coach Pruitt for a year? And obviously we know the result, but what was he like, and how different was he than Coach Stoops, and what did you learn from him?
Yeah, Jeremy Pruitt, we came in and we basically cleaned house with our entire defensive philosophy. It was like learning a completely different game. He brought in Nick Saban's defense and basically personnel matching. So, which opened up a great opportunity for me personally, because when it comes to personnel matching, we actually had 3 defensive tackles when it came to regular set. So we had 3 defensive tackles. So we had Timmy Jernigan and Eddie Goldman basically gunning for those starting positions. And then we had a 3rd defensive tackle that needed to take on double teams. So I was able to actually figure out how to polish and take on double teams really well, and I was able to get that starting position. But Jeremy's just that whole defensive scheme that he brought has a lot to do with movement. We're moving. We are blitzing, we are moving. We have a basically almost like a fox like Adam Fuller has. We're going to run, we're going to slant, we're going to have our defensive tackles contain, we're going to run fire zones, we're going to do a lot of different things in order to disguise, but also be able to blitz and also be able to really put our hand in the dirt and get after it as well. But a lot of plays. So it was hard to figure it out and transition into it, just because of how complex it was. But we figured it out. Obviously, we figured it out, and we were able to dominate it. But Jeremy Pruitt is a super smart guy. He would understand what was going on in the defense. Our play calls were pretty quick, just because the second he knew the down and distance, he saw what formation they came out in, he knew what he was running. He was extremely intelligent. And I love playing for that guy, man. That was a great time to be a Nole, obviously, but his defense was great.
What did you learn for your third defensive coordinator? You go from somebody who keeps it simple and says, go ahead and eat, to somebody who is asking you to consider permutations and if-then statements before the ball is snapped. What's it like under Charles Kelly? Because, again, from our perspective, Charles was a soft-spoken guy, heart of gold. Players seem to really love him, but he didn't have that. He wasn't wound as tight as Jeremy Pruitt. So what was it like to learn underneath Coach Kelly?
Yeah, that was it was fairly easy, because that was one of the first time we actually transitioned into somewhat the same defense. So we kept a lot of the same schemes, but we just kind of simplified it. We were able to make a lot of things trigger a lot of things. So, and that was the biggest thing when it came into to the off season, was how do we make this more simple for our guys to pick up, learn, and execute. And once you're able to have certain things trigger, so like when we're in a certain, when it's a certain call, we're going to be automatically in cover 3. We're going to be automatically running a fire zone. We're going to automatically do some of these things. That's where everyone knows what they're doing based on about 15 different calls, instead of having 25 different calls and throwing in some wrinkles on certain games. So that was probably the biggest difference that I saw in that defense. I think we still ran a ton of blitzes. I think he was still just as aggressive. He's still just as passionate. He wants to get after it. He wants to win. He wants to get after the quarterback. He was really supportive, because obviously he was a linebacker coach, but he was very supportive in that front seven up front, making sure that we had the right games, right? So then you had Brad Long coming from Florida that 2015, 2014, coming in that next year, coming in, and he was our new defensive end coach. And a lot of people may not know who he was, but he was so impactful to our defense. He took a ton of pride in not having to blitz as much, because he's like, my 2 guys up front are getting to the quarterback. We're getting to the quarterback. We don't need to send a blitz. We're getting there. So you can secondary, do your job. We're going to do ours. And he worked on technique. And that's where you saw DeMarcus Walker progress from 2.5 sacks that year to then going into almost 26 sacks his last 2 years of his career. Unbelievable. Brian Burns killing it. And this is all from just this defensive end, from being able to hone in on some of the games that we implemented, which we didn't have as much games with Charles Kelly as well as Jeremy Pruitt. Brian Long brought in specific games and was very passionate about them, and we ran them well, and we learned the technique on how to run them effectively and efficiently. It played a huge role in a lot of players going and making a ton of money, as well as us still being successful and being one of the top defenses in the country.
When you're looking at Adam Fuller, and you just explained all of these minds that you learned from, what do you see, and what does he remind you of? Because when we watch football as fans, we draw on our past experiences to help inform what we're watching now. That's how we act like coaches in the stands when with timeout clock management, little things like that. But you played it on top 10 defenses, top 5 defenses in the country. How do you consume what you see with Adam Fuller, and who does he remind you of?
Yeah, Adam. So his defense is super fun to watch. So we have almost like a hybrid between Jeremy, to where we're able to move and be really fluid with our defense, and be able to have that fox be able to come out and go into the flats and cover, which we did a little bit with Coach Stoops, but Jeremy did it a lot more. And I think we're talking about a hybrid, because what Adam Fuller does is he's able to manipulate his real versatile players. Obviously, we have all of our corners and linebackers and defensive line and everything like that, but then we have our stud, we have our bandit, we have our fox, and which are really the core to his defense, and they're very important because they're able to get us out of jams, right? They're able to help us maximize certain plays and do things well, but they're also able to help us when we're in quads or we're in trips and we have a backside safety that has to get contained. That potentially could be a baller. That person's position is very important because he's not just a regular safety. And that's what makes Adam Fuller's defense really flourish, is being able to have that front seven, that front line eat, as well as his Swiss Army knives and his all-round players eat as well. It's a fun defense to watch. I'm looking forward to watching it this season.
And last thing I'll ask you, again, to pin you down a little bit, maybe in terms of presence. I know maybe you don't know Adam Fuller like you knew your former defensive coordinators, but just the way he carries himself on the sidelines, does he remind you more of a Stoops, more of a Pruitt, or a Kelly, or a Lawing? Who does he look like to you?
I would say more of a Pruitt. I think he's really, really locked in, and I think that he is. Which I think Mark Stoops was always locked in as well. He was somebody that was pretty serious. But just in terms of if I had to make a comparison, I would say probably Jeremy Pruitt if I have between the two of them. And also his philosophy. He likes to be able to move his players around and be able to react sometimes when it comes to them doing some, really would want to call it just crap, right? The offense wants to throw crap at you. Yeah. Let's be ready for it. And that's something that his defense does. So, and I genuinely enjoy watching it. I cannot wait to continue to break this down and continue to see kind of what wrinkles he's going to put in for what particular games, and how he's going to utilize some of these players, because some of these players are super exciting, and we may see him at Fox, we may see him at Bandit, we may see him kind of bouncing around all over, but he's going to put the players in the right position, and it's going to be fun to talk about him.
That's one. So I got a new idea for a video, which is when they throw crap at you, because when you're better, when you're just better, teams have to do that. They've got to reach into the bag of tricks and do weird stuff. How do you adapt to that on the fly? That's another topic for another day. We hope you enjoyed this video here on Warchant TV with Nile Lawrence-Stample, national champion defensive lineman for Florida State, giving us his insights and making us smarter about football. Again, hit the like button underneath this video. Subscribe to Warchant TV. It's absolutely free. And we will talk to you next time right here on Warchant TV. The season's right around the corner.